How's it going, gamers? My name is Rushcode, and recently we hit 50 subs. Thanks, guys! As a way to celebrate this milestone, I've put together a basic tutorial in this video for how to make a simple point-and-click game. I'm hoping that beginners who don't know much about coding but are serious about making games will be able to follow along, but I've also put some links in the description below for some fundamental coding stuff that might be worth going to before you watch the rest of this video. So check that out too. So here's the game. It's called Push the Button. There's only 5 elements to this game, and that is the background, the button, the title, how to interact with the button, and how to keep track of the score. So assuming you guys have already gone through the links in the description below, and you know how to use the P5 platform, and you know how to code in JavaScript, let's get started. When you open the P5 web editor, it'll make a fresh file for you with this bit of code in it. I'll go into more detail about this later, but basically, the first function, setup, will run everything just one time when you click the play button, while the draw function will run everything on repeat until you stop the game. But before we dive into those two functions, let's make a new line at the top and declare a variable. The word let is like an action to declare any new variable. The word button is the name of our variable. If you don't know what a variable is, then feel free to check out the link in the description below, but here's a brief explanation. Imagine a table that you can put stuff on. The table is your variable. If you put a few letters on this table, then you will make a string variable. If you put a whole number on this table instead, then you've made an integer variable. Now if you put 2 decimal numbers on this table and pair them together like a coordinate and give it a few special properties, we will make a vector variable. And this is what button will be. Because we're going to position the button at the very center of this canvas, and we need some kind of variable to remember that position at all times. Before we give it that information, let's declare a couple more variables. So on this next line, we've declared a variable known as button color, and this will be a string variable. When it comes to colors, you can either use words or numbers to describe them in coding, and words are basically strings. So we're going to be grabbing a color from this table later on, and you can find a link to this table in the description below. Finally, let's make a variable to remember the score. This will be an integer variable because when we're counting the number of times we push the button and recording that as a score, we'll be saving them as whole numbers, which is just another word for integer. Okay, declaration's done. Let's put in some information and begin setting up our game. First, let's resize our canvas. This is where we draw everything. At the moment, if you click play and run this game, you will see a canvas pop up on the right side, which is 400 pixels wide and 400 pixels tall. So if we change these numbers to 800 by 600, we get a canvas that looks more widescreen. This is what we'll be using. Next, let's do our game settings. If you want to be more organized with your code, you can type a comment here by using a double /. On the next line, type button equals create vector 400, 300. This is where we officially make the button a vector type, and we're even giving it some initial information. 400 and 300 represents the position. This is because on our canvas of 800 by 600 pixels, the center of this canvas is halfway to the right and halfway down. Something very important to keep in mind is that the canvas is always measured from the top left corner. That's your point of origin. Going to the right increases the X value, and going down increases the Y value. So now that we know our button is going to be 400 pixels to the right and 300 units down, let's give it a color. Crimson is basically a shade of red, and double quotations are used to officially make this a type of string. The next line of code is score equals 0. This officially makes the score variable an integer type. And we're starting from 0 simply because at the start of each game, you would not have pushed the button yet. Okay, this next line of code is more a visual aesthetic thing. Text align center center is going to do pretty much what it says. Our game title and our score are going to be displayed as text on the canvas, and we want this to be placed right down the middle of this canvas. Every piece of text has an anchor point. By default, this is in the bottom left corner on the baseline of the text, which means placing our text at the center will make it offset like this. How do we fix this? By changing the anchor point. So center center tells text align to change the anchor point for all of our text to the very center of the text somewhere above the baseline. So later when we start displaying text, our score and game title should come out in the right spot. At the moment, clicking the play button will only show you an empty canvas. So let's put some stuff on it by writing code in the draw function. The background looks quite boring right now, so change the value 220 to the word pink. Background is quite special in that it can either use numbers to describe colors, or it can use words. It's easier to use words to describe colors, so that's what we're doing. There are 3 main elements we need to see in our game: the button, the title, and the current score. First, we're going to display the button. You can type a comment for it if you like. On the next line, type fill, and then in brackets, button color. What this will do is take the crimson button color and dump it like a bucket of paint onto the button to fill it up. It's like the background line, but it doesn't draw anything. To do that, we need to write this next line. Circle, button.x, button.y, 200. There's a few things going on in here. Firstly, circle enables us to draw the button in the shape of a circle. But where do we draw this circle-shaped button? We need it to be at the center of the canvas, and if you recall from before, we made a vector to save that information specifically for the button. The two numbers we saved, 400 and 300, were respectively the x and y values for our coordinate. So button.x will recall the 400, while button.y recalls the 300. As for the 200 at the end, that is simply describing the diameter of the circle. So our circle is going to be 200 pixels wide. At this point, if you click play, you should see something that looks like this. Next, we're going to display the title. Using fill again, type the word black inside it. So this is going to color the text black. And feel free to use any color you want from the table I showed before, but just don't make it the same color as the background, because obviously then it will just disappear. It's also interesting to note that if we didn't type this line, our text will just inherit the button color. Okay, this next line is text size 70. The size is roughly representing the height of the text, so 70 just means it's going to be 70 pixels tall, making the text quite large. To display the actual title, you have to type this next line. So the text command will display whatever string you want. In this case, we're using the phrase push the button. 400, 100 are the x and y positions on the canvas for this text. And this is where the text align center thing comes in handy. We want the center of this title to be 400 units to the right and just 100 units from the top of the canvas. Since the anchor point is already centered on the text itself, it will line up with our 400, 100. If you wish to experiment a bit, you can comment out the text align center thing and run the game to see how differently the game title is positioned. Moving on, let's display the current score. We want the score to be a little bit smaller than the game title, so we're using a text size of 50. As for the score itself, it's based on the value contained in our variable score, which is 0 at the moment. Button.x and button.y simply means we'll be positioning the score at the same center as the button. This is just my personal preference, so if you want to change the position of the score, all you need to do is replace button.x for a number anywhere between 0 to 800 and button.y for a number anywhere between 0 to 600. Click play now and you should see everything display like so, but you'll quickly notice that nothing happens no matter how hard you click that button. And that is because we haven't programmed any mouse interaction yet. So let's make a couple of new functions called mouse pressed and mouse released. Mouse pressed is a built-in function for P5 to help you detect when the mouse has been pressed. And mouse released is also a built-in function to help detect when you release your finger from the mouse button. So under mouse pressed, make a new line, and we're going to declare a variable. The difference between this variable and the one we did at the start is that this one's local while the other three were global. Meaning this variable does not exist outside this function, while the other three exist everywhere. So mouse is a bit like button, isn't it? It's a vector with a position mouse x, mouse y. These variables are very special. They're built into P5 and are used for keeping track of the mouse's position at all times. So what we're doing is saving the current position of the mouse into a local variable known as mouse. And we're doing this in vector format because it's going to make the maths so much easier to compute in this next step. This is known as an if statement. If you've never seen this before, then please check out the links in the description to learn more about it. Basically, it is checking if something is true, and that something is the stuff written inside the round brackets. The mouse variable is a type of vector. So just like button, you can do a mouse.x or a mouse.y to get its current position. But vectors have many different commands you can pull from it. .dist is another one. What this does is calculate the distance from another vector. If you remember learning in school about the distance between 2 points, this basically does that for you. But for this to work, you must use a vector for the next bit. Nothing else will work. This is why we made button a vector in the first place. Less than 100 means we're checking if the distance between the mouse and the center of the button is less than 100 pixels apart. Why? Because our button is a circle with a diameter of 200, meaning the boundary of this button is 100 units away from the center. So as long as the mouse stays within that vicinity, it is considered less than 100. And when that happens, the statement becomes true and we have met the condition. Which brings us to our next line. Button color equals firebrick. When the mouse is pressed, we want to have a visual indication of that. So we change the color ever so slightly from crimson to firebrick. When this happens, we need to update the score. Score plus 1 means take the current score and increase it by a value of 1, and then save that into the score variable. And that is all the interaction you need from this function, so let's move on to the mouse released. When you release the mouse button, you want the button to change back to the original color, which was crimson, so we're simply reverting the color back to crimson. And that is the end of the code. We're finally done. Phew! So all you need to do now is click play and test your game. You might notice that you can click the button either with the right or left click on the mouse, and that's expected because the function mouse pressed is indifferent to whichever button you click on the mouse. If you guys want a copy of this code, then feel free to grab it from the link in the description below. It's called First Game Tutorial. I've included some optional coding in it, and this is what my game looks like because of it. Basically, if you click it a few times, you'll start to get some text randomly popping up at the bottom, like Keanu Reeves, my pumpkin, or Fart the Almighty, or the Almighty Moo Moo. There are a few other mods you can challenge yourself to make on this game, like changing the button shape, changing the fonts, the colors, or making your code dynamic so that it can adapt to different canvas sizes, or creating some reset functionality within the game so that you can restart the game without having to click the stop and play button, or going as far as randomizing certain elements like the colors, the shapes, the sizes, or doing like what I did and introducing random text as a reward for clicking the button at least 10 times. Heck, you could even try making multiple buttons in there and creating some kind of machine that puts out some kind of output. I don't know, the sky's the limit here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, then hit that like button, let me know what you think down in the comments below. And if you want to help this channel get to the next goal of 100 subs, then hit subscribe and join the channel. I don't know when my next video is going to be, but I hope to see you guys before the end of the year. So in the meantime, stay safe, thanks for watching, and I'll see all you gamers in the next video. Goodbye for now.